Hey everybody, it is time once again for another Rahdo Q&A. And hello everybody, I'm about to answer a bunch of questions submitted by folks like you to the email address questions@rahdo.com. And by all means folks, if anything I talk about or my wife talks about, because she sometimes shows up on these as well, prompts any further questions from you, well, you know what to do. Questions@rahdo.com is the email address. Keep them coming, folks. I want to hear your cues so I can am. And speaking of which, let's get right to it. But, folks, I'm going to talk about several different topics today, and if any of them don't really strike your fancy, don't worry. There are links down in the show notes that let you jump around from question to question so you can listen to just the parts you're interested in. All right, sound good? Then let's go. Okay, everybody, let's get going. We're going to start, as always, alphabetically with AJ, who says, I thought I'd say hi. And I say hi, AJ, and goodbye, but not until the end of this episode. I've enjoyed listening to your Q&As on my drive to work. A couple of them on topics keep popping up now and then. One being that you lost audience when you were wearing your political shirts. I'm disheartened that occurred, as I wish we could all be more accepting of each other. That being said, I'm not even one who appreciated the messages. I've always looked at the board game hobby as my escape from the world around us. We're always bombarded with everyone's opinions on social media, TV, books. But when we disagree even slightly, feelings are hurt and friendships are damaged. But with board games, we can sit and focus on a common experience without worrying about elections or wars or who Taylor Swift is dating. Okay, AJ. Thank you for the kind words. I don't know that I agree with this. I appreciate that you enjoy the show, but I'm not quite sure what you mean when you say that you don't appreciate the message. I'm assuming of the fact that for a couple of years, I wore shirts that proudly and loudly proclaimed that Black Lives Matter, or that we should help Palestine. I wore Palestine shirts for 2 years, or that trans lives matter, or what trans rights are human rights, or that gun control is important, or that we should save the Uyghurs, and there were so many different shirts I wore over the years, and it's interesting when you say that you didn't appreciate the message. Because I understand your perspective, but I want you, if you can, while you're driving to work, to try to look at this, not from your perspective that you don't appreciate the message, but from the perspective of someone who does. From a person of color, or a trans person, or, any marginalized community, or, somebody who, I don't know, is in the middle of wholesale slaughter, and needs your help and your support. You may not appreciate it. You may look at your board game and say, oh, finally, a respite. I am no longer responsible for caring about the plight of my fellow man and woman and child. And see, from their perspective, where you say, you know what? Right now, I don't even care that black people are subject to systemic racism that keeps them back in our American society. I don't even want to hear about it. I don't want to think about it. I want to pretend that doesn't exist. I just want to play my game. How do you think that sounds to them? Because I'll tell you, I wore those shirts because there are a lot of people who do appreciate that message and who I wanted to signal that they are not alone, that there are people out there who support them in their struggle, who want a more fair and just and equitable world. And I'm not saying you don't, AJ, but the message you send when you say, boy, I really don't want to hear about Black Lives Matter. There's two ways you could respond to that when it's presented to you in your day-to-day life. You can either say, nope, don't want to hear about it, and that sends a very clear message that the issue is not worthy of your time, is not worthy of your thought, is not worthy of your concern. Now, the other way you could respond to that is, yeah, boy, that really sucks. And that's something that I want to see change for the better too. Now, let's play that game. There's two ways you could respond to seeing that in real life. And I think, again, AJ, again, I appreciate that you've enjoyed the channel, and I'm glad this is anonymous and nobody knows it, but I'm just talking to you, AJ. When this comes up in your life, you do not have to look at it as a great inconvenience or something that is taking. You are very privileged to be in a place in your life where you can say, well, yeah, I just don't want to have to think about these problems. That's how these problems continue to fester and metastasize in society. If enough good people just look away and say, look, I got my own problems, Jack. I just want to play a game. Can everybody just get along? No, things need to change. And I hope if you can try to put yourself from the perspective, and forget about these ones of the day, go back to the Clinton presidency and imagine you are a gay person trying to build a better life for yourself. And the message comes across as hold on a second. My phone is ringing. Oh, hold on. Right. What was I just saying? Don't say gay bill. How does that come across? That the president of the United States is saying, could you just be quiet about who you are and what your lived experience is? Could you just make the rest of us comfortable by just pretending to be something else? How does that come across? I know, honestly, and at the time, this was a forward-thinking for us, because at least it was saying, hey, you know what? You can serve in the military just as long as you keep it secret. That was a step in the right direction. That was an incremental step, and it was better than nothing. But it still sucks. And, if you say, oh, Black Lives Matter, could you just put that shirt back in the closet, please? It's the same thing. And I don't think board games should be a vehicle to allow problems of society to continue to metastasize and say, well, you know what? Look, if we could just all put our differences aside, I'm sorry. The difference about whether we should have equal rights for everybody, the difference about whether innocent children should not be carpet bombed, we shouldn't put those differences aside just so that we can sit down and play a game together. So just give that some thought while you're driving to work. Anyway, and if it makes you uncomfortable and you're not ready for that, give that some thought. Why is the idea of just graciously saying, yes, this is a problem. I understand. I accept it. I want the world to be better for everyone. Because that's a different way you could respond to seeing me wear a Black Lives Matter t-shirt in my video. It takes just as much effort as saying, oh, I'd rather not see it, or I'm just going to pretend you're not watching it. And ask yourself, why do you respond one way instead of another? And again, what does that say to others who are suffering through this? Okay, let's continue. However, I never feel like I had to cancel your channel for my subscriptions. That's because as I've mentioned in the past. It's interesting, actually. Last podcast, I briefly put up, an analytics page, right? And I kind of broke down the demographics of who watches my channel. I forgot to mention one thing. When I was talking about how much of a weird outlier I am on YouTube, that only like 30% of my audience is in the USA and the most of the rest is around the world, I totally forgot to mention, because I totally forgot. I had studied this and I had watched. I used to have around 55% of my audience being in America. That was back when I used to live in Europe, ironically. And it wasn't until I started wearing Black Lives Matter that I saw that ratio change. The lion's share of people who said, nope, I am done with you, Rahdo, are American viewers. My European viewers, my Asian viewers, my African viewers, those numbers didn't really change. And in some, other than to increase in overall viewership. But my viewership in America dropped, went from 55% of my overall audience to around 30% where it is today. And yeah, You can't necessarily draw a causative thing, but as soon as I start wearing Black Lives Matter shirt, Americans specifically, and specifically American board gamers said, no, I don't want to hear about that. Rahdo is a woke SJW, as if somehow being a warrior for social justice is a bad thing about being woke. And let's not forget what woke means. Woke means that your eyes have opened to the injustice that is delivered to other people who do not benefit from the same privileges as you. That's it. That's all woke means. And to somehow turn that into a pejorative framework to say, oh, I actually appreciate and empathetic towards the suffering of others. That's what it means to be woke. How is that a bad thing? But anyway, I totally forgot to mention that. I realized afterwards. So I'm glad, AJ, you got me a chance to clarify that just underlines, the fundamental sickness of the American society. Anyway, though, I either skipped forward or zoned out until you got to the gaming content, even when I agree with a t-shirt. That's the beauty of the internet. You can choose to scroll past. You have the right to use your channel as a mini platform. I have the right to fast forward. Of course, yes, that's certainly cool. I can't deny you that. And it certainly always struck me as very odd, although not really. Because I have mentioned in the past, I think, and I'm sorry, man, my last podcast has gone right into politics, but A for AJ. AJ was at the beginning. Probably should have left this in the political section at the end. Maybe I'll move this around to the politics section. Oh, I already have to do editing. Maybe it'll be some more editing. That might be the case. I might move this into politics. Or maybe I won't, because this will also be my last Q&A, won't it? And if it's my last Q&A, I would like these ideas to try to, wedge their way into people's minds. But okay, so respond to this. That's certainly true. You have the right. I just want to say, I don't blame anybody who is against equal rights for black people to say, no, I don't want to watch Rahdo's channel anymore. Because if there was a channel out there where they started wearing MAGA shirts, Make America Great Again, Donald Trump shirts or t-shirts or your hats or something, I guarantee no matter how much I like that channel, I would unsubscribe. You're right. I could just ignore that and say, you know what? I'll continue watching. And because what am I doing by doing that? I am tacitly supporting everything that MAGA stands for. I am tacitly supporting, accelerating the effects of climate change by drilling more for oil instead of, and actively trying to fight against green initiatives to save the planet. If I support MAGA, that's what I support. If I wear that shirt, if I support MAGA, if I wear that hat, I am saying I support sexual assault against women. Let's not forget, Donald Trump openly bragged about sexual assaulting women, and then a few years later, he was found liable in civil court for having sexually assaulted, likely raping a woman. And if I wear a MAGA shirt, I am saying I'm okay with that. And by the same token, if I keep on watching a channel that supports that, I'm giving a fraction of a penny to that channel every time I watch because I'm a YouTube premier, and so they automatically get a fixed bit of income from me. And I don't want to support that. So by the same token, if there is somebody who is vehemently opposed to the concept of DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion, well, I appreciate that you don't want to give me a fraction of a penny by watching my video. More power to you. I would ask you to really dig down deep and say, why are you against? I love it. There's a new, somehow it's supposed to be a pejorative, a Jedi. I love being a Jedi because I'm for. You just have to rearrange the DEI to justice for equity, diversity, and inclusion. I'm a Jedi. I'm an SJW. Why would you be against those core ideas? Why would you want to shout somebody down? Why would you want to shut that out? When you are presented with board game content, what is it about you that says, "Oh, I came for the board games"? But, the justice, equity, diversity, and inclusion, I'm going to pass on that, please. Just, and I'm not saying this aggressively. I understand that if I had grown up in a different socioeconomic status, with a different set of influences. If I had listened to right-wing talk radio my entire life, from my childhood and my 20s, there but for the grace of God go I, although I say that as an atheist. So I understand. And that's why I just want to say, strip away all of your feelings, your preconceived notions about SJW wokeism and how it's destroying the fabric of humanity, and just ask, why am I arguing against diversity, equity, inclusion, and justice? Aren't those things I literally agree with on a basic level? And if you say that, yes, I do believe in those things, then come back to what you're vehemently fighting against, but try to look at it from that perspective. And I think you'll find it's really, really easy to say, oh, wait, yeah, you're right. We shouldn't tell people to pretend there's something that they're not. We should try really, really hard to give disadvantaged people a leg up, so that they can enjoy the same benefits of society that I do. You would think, yeah, I want that for my neighbor. Why don't I want that for some, abstracted concept of a person? Anyway, sorry, AJ. Anyway, also, I just want to say that I like how the channel has evolved. I like that you have different contributors to playthroughs. Everyone does a great job in different ways, and the fact that you have brought so many voices on the channel is awesome. I actually enjoy Says the most because I can follow along easier. That Rahdo guy is constantly changing his mind about what he's going to do and getting so animated about it. Thankfully, he does final thoughts too. Yeah, I appreciate that. I think I love having everybody on the channel for a myriad reasons. I'm glad you're enjoying that. So, no question really, and yet I ended up finding an answer. Just an, quote, appreciate what you bring to the hobby, and I would still want to sit and play a game with you even if given a chance, even if you were wearing a Save the Bigfoots t-shirt. Well, I appreciate that. Would you want to do it if I were, but you're just kind of joking it down. Would you want to do it if, pick something you feel vehemently, strongly against. And if I were wearing that shirt, if you are very much, I wore so many shirts. That's something, because honestly, if AJ, and I'm not saying you do, but if you're wearing a MAGA shirt, honestly, I don't want to sit down with you, because I don't want to spread a message that, yes, I tacitly support the horrible things that MAGA and support of Donald Trump represents. I reject that. And that's why you could be a wonderful person. But there's a difference between just voting for Trump because, I just love his wacky, irreverent humor, and I like it that he sticks it to the man, and I pretty much ignore all the bad stuff, all the truly horrible stuff, and figure, it's probably not as bad as all those SJWs make out. I'm not saying this is you at all, AJ. I don't know you from Adam, but it's one thing to just what's it? Hanlon's razor. Never ascribe to malice that which can be attributed to ignorance. I totally get that. I completely believe that. But there's a big shift when you go from just, voting to actually letting your body be a billboard for something. And again, just trying to somehow bring it all back to board games, because this is supposed to be the board game section. But AJ, you started with this. I don't think... board games are an incredible tool to allow people to sit down together. But by the same token, do you want to, let me put it to you this way. Do you want to play board games with a Nazi? A literal Nazi? If you could go back in time to the rise of Nazism in Germany, would you want to sit down and play Settlers of Catan with Hitler? And you say, oh, well, you know what? I'm just going to put all the Hitlery stuff to the side, and we're just going to enjoy a game, because the game lets us bridge the gap and find our common humanity. What does that say? What message does that send? What are you supporting when you do that? It's just not as simple as saying, oh, I can ignore all the world's ills when I sit down at a table with a bunch of cardboard and plastic chits in front of me. So, again, just some food for thought, AJ, while you're driving to work. Thanks for watching, and catch you later. Okay, let's move on to Ben, who I think has nothing to do with politics in his question. I appreciate, AJ, you didn't mean that, but hey, it's my last show. Alrighty. From Ben, I am thrilled about your recent discovery of Jeffrey CCH's designs, and I picked up Age of Civilization, Age of Galaxy, and Inheritors for a total of $50 new. Yes, these are amazing deals. People who say that you can't get, reasonably priced games these days are simply not paying attention. They are only taking a very myopic look at big, crazy, super deluxe Kickstarter things and saying somehow that represents the entirety of board games, when in fact, the majority of board games are still fairly reasonably priced, and in some cases even unreasonably low priced, like the collected works of Jeffrey CCH. Oh, I'm getting spicy all over the place here at the end of the podcast, folks. Anyway, Ben continues. The prospect of a big game in a small box is always exciting, and it seems like there's been other great ones lately. Red Cathedral, White Castle, Solar Sphere, Beer and Bread, etc. Are there others that come to mind for you? Let's go back one last time to come back to the browser. I was there on Board Game Geek, but let's go to top.rahdo.com. Let's just look at recent games that... Oh, Chrome, why are you doing this to me? Hold on a second. I have to clear my Chrome cache now because it's this weird bug with Chrome that doesn't happen in other browsers. I am so close to quitting Chrome because of this. Hold on. Okay, I'm back, baby. So here's a list of all the games sorted by year that I've been keeping recently. It's interesting. 2024... I have not played any. I've only played 2 bangers so far, and both of them are a bit oversized boxes, so they don't fit. It's weird. Salton Sea 2 is the latest game from Devere. Oh, wait, no. Salton Sea. It is still in the smaller box size that Devere is doing. It's their most recent one, Sand, that they ended up going bigger. Although, everything barely fit in there, so they had to do it. But Salton Sea, another great example. Pretty much everything Devere is doing, trying to find ways to cram big games into little boxes, has been amazing. And let's see. I'm just looking. And again, you already mentioned White Castle. And I'm just trying to visualize all these boxes. Namalia, a wonderful little card game with big gameplay, I feel. Raua? I don't remember the size of that box, but that's a really great one also. Point City, a phenomenal game from 2023. Of course, these still do feel like smaller games. Big games in small boxes. That is a really, really great topic. Because generally big games get bigger boxes. The Tiny Epic series, of course, is the ultimate example of this. And oh my gosh, Tiny Epic Game of Thrones puts, I don't think you've ever seen a bigger game in a small box in the entire history of board games. But you're right, it is kind of an outlier, isn't it? If a game becomes big in terms of its overall experience, it gets into a big box. I think, for the most part, that publishers, there's been this long-standing thing that it's bad business to put your game in a small box, because then you literally do not take up as much space on the board game shelf at the local friendly game store. And that means you're going to suffer. Your sales are not going to do as well as if you were in a big box with a beautiful piece of art that enticed somebody to pick it up, and then it turns out you get it home and the box is half full of air. There's a reason for that. Now, it's interesting. I think as time goes on, and as sadly, as I've talked about on this podcast before, more and more friendly local game stores are going to close and go out of business because ultimately Amazon is going to gobble up everything. Oh, I'm going back into politics again, folks. But the reality is, 20 years from now, storefronts are going to be this weird anachronistic thing where I had to leave my home to go get a thing when a drone I could push a button and within a couple of hours it'll be at my doorstep. That is the future. Thousands of years from now, hundreds of years from now, we won't have actual replicators because that's probably fantasy, but we will have the equivalent with home printing and all of the rest of it. And automated delivery. Stores aren't going to exist other than in the same way that today people will still go on a horse and carriage ride through Central Park in New York because it's a special thing. It's a weird anachronistic thing. Nobody goes on a horse and carriage ride anymore because they need to. It's a horribly inefficient way to get from one place to another. You do it as a nostalgic, trip to a bygone era. Going to a store is going to be the same thing. Storefronts will cease to exist for the most part, including all these massive Walmarts all over the place. And everything is going to be 100% about home delivery via automated vehicles. And, as we get closer to that, We kept bringing it back to board games, trying to bring it back to board games, folks, I promise. As we get closer to that, box size won't matter anymore. And, because at the same time, in parallel to while that's happening, we are also, as a species, going to get our act together and stop being so wasteful. You see, like Daybreak is such an amazing job. As a game that is made with reconstituted green practices, the Rewood, this new thing that replaces really cool little plastic miniatures with really cool little wooden miniatures that have just as much detail on them is so exciting and amazing. I mean, again, since this is my last podcast, I might as well rhapsodize a little bit about board gaming and how it's going to get so much better. And publishers won't feel. I mean, it'll be terrible. It'll be sad. It'll be an apocalypse for store owners around the world as they just don't have people. I mean, it's already happening, and it's just going to continue to happen. Which is why, folks, we need, repeat it after me, universal basic income. It is unavoidable. It is the future. It is absolutely necessary. And by the way, I'll talk about this a little bit more in the personal section when we get to the second half. I'll do a big treatise about the future of humanity, what's coming that's good and what's coming that's bad. So I'll stop trying to repeat it so much here because this is supposed to be about games. But about games, it's going to change. And I think we will finally let go of this, we have to stuff these big, gigantic boxes full of air to get people to pick them up off the shelves, because the shelves just won't exist. Sorry, that's not your question. I'm really dodging the question because I don't think there are that many. But I will say, though, that if you really want the answer, one more time, longtime listeners have heard me say this a million times. Let's just do it one more time. Right, let's come back over here to http://faq.rahdo.com. Let's see, are you going to work? Yes, it worked. Okay. And it's entry number 5. The question: I love insert game subject here. What games should I buy? It's kind of what you're suggesting. Hey, I love this idea of a big game in a small box. What else should I look for? And I've always been terrible at that. I started trying, I failed, but FAQ.rahdo.com has your answer, because the answer is head over to the Board Game Geek recommendation forum. There's a link for it right here. And if you go there, I guarantee if you ask this question, you will get inundated with hundreds of potentially dozens, if not hundreds of responses. Although I wouldn't be surprised. Let's search. Has it been asked already? Small box, big game. Let's search this thread. I bet you people have already asked this in the past. But we're searching through everything. Now I got to go and I got to get down to recommendations instead of the entirety. And then we come into it. Let's see here. Tiny Epic versus the 19. Yeah, that's right off the bat from the recommendations. Gives you easily a dozen games you've probably never heard of. You should check out the 19XX series of games from Looping, like 1980, 1932, 19. There's a whole bunch of them, and they're all big experiences in small games. But here's a thread: your crunchiest in small box board game card game. This was literally just done a couple of weeks ago. So I didn't go fishing for you, Ben, but hopefully I have taught you how to fish. Here is a whole thread with a bunch, I'm sure, of really, really great, like Court the King, Favor of the Pharaoh, good suggestions. Arkwright, the Card Go. Oh, that's an amazing suggestion. There's a lot of great suggestions here. Of course, a lot of people talking about Tiny Epics, but there are other ones out there as well. And so, hopefully, as I sail off into the sunset, I have helped you, answer your own questions in the future, because I won't be here anymore. Let's continue. I know it would probably have some overlap with the recent top 10 travel and maybe filler games lists on the R&R show. But have you ever considered revisiting your top 10 TARDIS games to talk about big games in smaller than original Glenmore boxes and maybe another top 10? Did I do that? Did I do a top 10? Or do another top 10 RV games. In the original, your number one was Gloomhaven, but for part 2, that was in my RVs. Your criteria could be top 10 games that would all fit in a Gloomhaven box. Did I do a top 10 TARDIS? Rahdo, top 10 TARDIS. I've done a lot of top 10s over the years. I don't see it. I must have been called something else. Rahdo, or Radio Times. So, what was that? Did I do a Rahdo top 10 small? Let's see what Google comes up with. No, I don't see it. But I believe you that apparently I did. Or again, You're probably referring to the fact that I did do a top 10 RVs. Oops. There we go. Yeah, I couldn't find it. Sorry. Oh, did I? I didn't have the search on the whole time while I was searching. Whatever. I do think that's a good subject matter. I think it's a good potential subject matter for the R&R show. I wonder if it'd actually have to be top 10 TARDIS games that aren't tiny epic. Because, of course, there's like 30 of them now, and probably half of them would just be that. I don't know. It's a good topic. I do like it. I'll mention it to Ruel as maybe something that we could hit in a future. Man, heck, if we could get, Gamelin Games, Michael Coe, the head of Gamelin Games, on as a special guest. We can make the whole subject of that. Hey, let's hear the Tiny Epic guy talk about his favorite TARDIS games, but you can't talk about Tiny Epic, of course. That could be something. Anyway, I haven't heard if this will be the final podcast. Yeah, well, you've heard now. But if it is, I just want to say many thanks to you and Jen for answering everyone's questions, providing hours and hours of entertainment. Really enjoyed the RV and travel stories, and I hope there ends up being a way to hear about your future adventures. Well, yes, again, of course, I haven't recorded this yet, but I am in the intro going to remind everybody that I will continue to answer questions, but it'll just be now for folks who help keep Rahdo running. So keep sending those questions to questions@rahdo.com, bearing in mind you won't hear the answers unless you go to patreon.com or join on YouTube. Okay. And that will be the end of this session of the Rahdo Q&A. Thank you, folks, for watching and also for submitting your questions. Send me more to the email address questions@rahdo.com, and I'll get you covered in a future episode. And in the meantime, if you would like to hear some more, you're in luck. I have been doing the Rahdo Talks Through audio podcast for years now with my wife, Jen, and we have got hundreds of hours for you to enjoy. You can hit that big box that's on screen right now if you want to dive deep. Also, you can go on ahead and subscribe so you won't miss the next Rahdo Q&A. And thank you, folks, for watching, for listening. Have a very, very nice day. Talk to you later. So long. Bye-bye.